Welcome to episode 4 of the Ready for More podcast. I'm your host, Heather Cameron, and today my guest is Robin Meyers of Navigate and Empower and the author of Alone But Not Lonely, Reclaiming Your Identity and Being Unapologetically You.
It's kind of muscle memory and muscle learning. You know, you're not going to go run a marathon if you're not a runner the next day. So it's really learning to change your mindset and learn to build in these tools and finding a way to do that. And you might rattle some feathers, you know, and people will be like, okay, what's going on? But you really have to be able to build that in.
Welcome to the Ready for More podcast, where we share success strategies and stories for women business owners, entrepreneurs who are ready for more for yourself and for your business. I'm your host, Heather Cameron, and I'm here to help you to discover your unique path to profitability, success, so you can achieve your more on your own terms. Are you ready for more? You can find today's show notes and links at www.igniteyourmarket.com/readyformore. Hi, I want to welcome today's guest, Robin Meyers of Navigate and Empower. Robin's mission is to educate and empower women to live fearlessly. Robin believes that you have the power to activate bold choices and live the life that you want and deserve. Today, Robin is an international speaker and has been on the stage in the US and Canada. She is the Amazon bestseller author of Alone But Not Lonely and radio host of Activate Bold Choices, the ABCs to live life fearlessly on BBM Global Network, TuneIn Radio, and iHeartRadio. Robin has over 25 years of experience in the corporate and nonprofit world, in education, training, mentoring, as well as Masters of Science and in Science degree in molecular genetics. Welcome, Robin.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Heather.
Thanks. And that's your bio. I'd love to know more about your business and your expertise, if you can give us kind of an overview.
Sure. Where should we start, I guess? Where would you like to start?
Well, really, the audience is women who are ready for more and looking for more in their business. So how have you become where you're at, and what's the evolution to the business and to being an international speaker that you've?
Okay, so my journey really begins with me. Obviously with me, but my journey really going back was I never, as a woman, used my voice. I went through life really not speaking for myself, as all women probably, you know, serving and doing for others, being that nurturer and giver. But I kind of went through life with the facade being fine, and having a great husband and family and all of that, but not knowing who Robin was and following my own passion. I had jobs to have jobs as my kids got older. My kids now are 21, 24, and 26. I have to think because one just had a birthday yesterday. So it shifts everything for a year. So as the, tuitions had started and things like that, I had jobs to help out and do things like that. I was blessed to be home with them for their younger years, but they were just jobs and not career paths. One of my later jobs was with a nonprofit group in the sciences, actually, director of education. And I thought it was the ideal job. I was working with teenagers, which I adored. And it was kind of an experiential learning process. And so that was all fantastic. The job itself, the boss I had was not so fantastic and made me become voiceless again. In the sense of, I would be on these big stages giving these big presentations, and she would come in and just shut me down. And so I went from being quiet and shy at home, even as an adult woman, to being shut down outside of my home. And I kind of put the brakes on, and I was like, okay, enough is enough. So what do I really want to do? Because I wasn't living my life on purpose. And so I wanted to really make sure that all women started to know that they had a voice to use. And so my first certification as a coach was with teen girls.
Okay.
I have 3 kids, 2 boys, and my youngest is a girl. And I was like, oh, we're not going to deal with this. So I wanted to make sure that she always knew that she could. And she's very good at using her voice. She's very strong and very empowered herself.
So you achieved that.
I learned a lot from her, but as I worked with the teens, the moms started to come to me, and the moms were like, "What about us?" And we were I was in this transition, and so were they, of becoming empty nesters. And what are we going to do with our lives? And that's really where I started to be able to reflect on my life and realize that was where I was most beneficial, and that was my sweet spot. And why I really am so passionate about what I do is that, we serve for so long, and we do, but we don't take care of ourselves. And what I did all my life was I never knew what self-care meant. I never even heard the term self-care. To go out or think about taking time for myself was maybe a possibility, but it was a possibility after everybody else was fed and so forth. So my goal really was, in starting Navigate and Empower, was to make sure that I developed programs that women really realize that unless they start learning the tools that they take time for themselves, they're never going to show up best for everybody else, because that's what it comes down to, that we need to really take care of ourselves. It's kind of like the scenario of the oxygen mask, really, right? There's a reason why on planes they say put yours on first and then help your child, because if you help your child first, you're about to pass out. You're not going to be able to do anything else. That's why.
Yeah. And that's great. Although I do hear a lot of women, both, the women I deal with who are businesses and in business, they say that they have to put their oxygen masks on first, but they don't actually know how to live that.
It takes training, actually. It really does, because, think of it's kind of muscle memory and muscle learning. You're not going to go run a marathon if you're not a runner the next day. So it's really learning to change your mindset and learn to build in these tools and finding a way to do that. And you might rattle some feathers, and people will be like, okay, what's going on? But you really have to be able to build that in. And what you'll learn is that the more you start to build that in, like I'm a huge believer in morning routine, huge. Because if you don't kind of take that time for you and not what has to happen that day for everybody else in your life, it's, I start with two basic questions. What are your intentions for the day? Mm-hmm. And what do you need? What do you have to have happen for your day? And that's business and personal. That's both. And so once you can answer that, then you can show up better for everybody else, And
those are two really empowering questions. I've just gone through 4 or 5 years as a prime caregiver for my parents. They both passed away now. But in that moment, in that time where I was trying to run a business and trying to be a caregiver for very complex situations, I wasn't doing enough of that. Mm-hmm. And I don't regret my decisions. I'm proud and happy that I was there for what they needed and what they needed to do. But at the same time, you just get zapped into that moment, and you're just kind of, that becomes your reality, and you kind of miss that taking care of yourself. And hindsight being 2020, having done more of self-care would have made me a better caregiver in the moments when it was really tough and stressful.
Right. Yeah, it's so true. I just came back actually from a business retreat, and one of the women in the room we were talking about, she's in a very high-powered business, and someone had said to her, when's the last time you've taken a day to yourself? And she's got 2 young kids, like 6 and 7 years old. Mm-hmm. And she kind of looked at the group like, are you out of your mind? Like, when am I supposed to do that? And the suggestion really is honestly, bring in the meal. She works a high-powered job, so she has a sitter that's at home when the kids get off the bus. And even if you leave the house 5 minutes before, let the sitter get there, and 5 minutes before the kids get there, you're out the door. Have the meal delivered, have everything ready, but you need that time to just break. But the idea with, building your mindset is that as you do it, it becomes muscle memory. And then you start realizing, like, I do need this. And so you do show up better for the rest of the day and your business.
And that's a really important thing for women who are in business, who want more, to realize that it's not, some of my clients, I often hear them think that some of this stuff is natural, that I should, and I do one of my giveaways is a should buster, because women should themselves to death. But I should know how to do this. And I keep trying to encourage people, no, you shouldn't. You have to learn, you have to practice, you have to And I love your term muscle memory. You have to teach yourself how to do some of this stuff. It's not necessarily intuitive.
It's not. And actually, I think it's almost counterintuitive because, we're brought up that we really are those caregivers. And part of our role is to take care of and to do. And so we do need to take a break, and we do need to I always say, listen, unless the house is on fire, you have 5 minutes to say, it's my time. Yeah. I have to figure out what's going on. And it sets your day up better. And it also prepares you then, because not everything happens perfectly, no matter how great your intentions are. How do you press the reset button when something does go wrong?
Right.
You're in a business meeting and the school calls and a kid needs picking up, or you're driving to a business meeting and it gets canceled, which totally messes up the structure of your day. You have a choice. You're taking an active choice here. How do you decide that it's not going to ruin your day? You're going to be productive from it.
I had a thought that's just gone out of my head, so I'll come back to that one. It was a really good question too.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. It's like it was there. It'll come back. How long have you been in business, actually? How long have you been doing, you wrote a book, and how long have you been focusing on that, and how long have you been self-employed or?
I'm coming into my 5th year as Navigate and Empower.
And what have you learned? Yeah. What's changed from when you started to where you are now?
So a lot has changed, actually. A lot has changed. I started, you kind of keep rebranding, you keep finding kind of, I had a niche, but then you just keep refining it. I started as a life coach, and I'm certified in all sorts of things, but then I noticed everybody was a life coach. So then I became a resiliency coach, and then a transformational leadership coach. But everybody still was a life coach. And then you start dealing with, the imposter syndrome and the self-doubt. And it really was, my business coach was like, what are you actually doing? Because I'm an educator by trade. And life strategist came out of that conversation. And so once I claimed being a strategist, it just sat better with me. And that actually only happened about 1.5 years ago. It made me feel more powerful. It made me claim being CEO rather than kind of starting a business and running a business. That whole transition, I really almost want to say that although Navigate Empower has been in business for almost, in its 5th year, I almost want to say it's only really almost 2 years old, in the sense of those transitions have happened.
And that's a really important one. I have a question currently on my Facebook page that asks, how do you define yourself as a business person to women? And it fascinates me that women don't step into the word entrepreneur very easily. They have a preconceived notion. They have this kind of sense of, what does it mean? I'll hear, I work from home, I'm self-employed, they might get to be a business owner, but to get them to step to that word entrepreneur, which all of them are by the definition of what an entrepreneur is.
Absolutely.
It's a real interesting mindset shift that has to happen. And you just demonstrated a really great path through that mindset shift that needs to occur for people to really step up and say, I am an entrepreneur. I don't just work from home. And I hear women say those words, I just work from home, right? We play small, and you have a wonderful path that you went through to get from small to bigger.
Absolutely. And you just said something really fantastic. It's playing small, like mentally and the business itself playing small. So one, it's playing larger, right? And stepping into it, playing larger and more confident. But it's also, you're always playing then a larger game, right? So even though I feel like I've grown now, like speaking, I've just started speaking, like really, really out on stage speaking last spring. So even that's tremendously growing now. So there's always like that next step up. Mm-hmm. But you're right, to say I have a business rather than I work from home or I sell Mary Kay, or like, these are all businesses that, women have created. And I would love women to really just start saying, I'm CEO. If they start using that word, plus you're CEO of your life and your household. I mean, we've been CEO of a lot of things, actually.
Absolutely.
But if you start saying I'm CEO of my business, which is whatever that is, I think you'll start hearing your shift in your own self.
Yes, and I do agree. And I think I come from a high-tech background. I come from a very male-dominant corporate career. Like I was one of the first women managers in my area, and I was the only woman manager at my level when I lived in Australia. I was fortunate to be an expat, and I was the only woman manager at my level in all of Asia. And it's a real interesting to observe how men step into it and how women step into it, right?
So different.
So different. Men do step into being an entrepreneur. They don't hesitate to use those words. They don't hesitate to call themselves CEO of their business, and yet we do. And that's what I'm passionate about, is getting women to really step up. Women have such potential, such skill set that they don't actually even see.
Actually, it's interesting. We actually, I think as a tribe of women, have more of a skill set to run anything, circles around the men, because we come with just this natural ability to multitask, to problem solve, to do all these different things and wear all these different hats, that we're probably much more equipped.
Yeah. And it's that confidence and that self-talk that goes in our heads that gets in our way, and the shoulds, right?
Yeah.
I think like when I talk about the shoulds in my stuff, the shoulds that we tell ourselves are almost more powerful than the shoulds that other people tell us.
That's definite.
Yeah. The shoulds that tell us self stop us from moving forward, and the shoulds that other people tell us get us confused on what to do.
I talk about the 4 triggers of self-doubt. I call them the 4 H's: the helplessness, hiding, hesitation, and hypercritical talk. So all separately, it messes with us because we play a mind game to ourselves. But together, we're really setting ourselves back, right? So it's how do you stop those kind of triggers from happening? And the more you recognize that you're being negative to yourself, because we tend to be our worst enemy to ourselves and not our own best friend, yet to our friends we would never say the things that we say to ourselves.
Absolutely.
If we can recognize when we start doing that and we stop it, we just become more aware. Mm-hmm. And the more we become aware, we start shortening that cord of being nasty to ourselves.
It's true though, because one of the things I don't think we also see our own perspective, because if somebody reads my bio, for example, it's like, who is that? Right? I have a really impressive bio. I don't always recognize that person in myself, right? Because it's just my life, right? It's my life. It's what I've lived. I've got all the sides and things that come into it. So sometimes I think even if we step back from ourselves and just look at what we've accomplished, we can really help our own self be more and be that next step that we want to go to.
Yeah. I think that's so important, to say for women, whether you're starting out as an entrepreneur or you're 5 years or 10 years into your business, is that, sometimes it's 2 steps forward and 3 steps back, and sometimes it's 1 and 2, but give yourself a minute to kind of pat yourself on the back and say, like, I did it. I might not have gotten all the ways to where I thought I would get, but look where I've come.
Absolutely.
And so learn from that, and then I'm going to go here next.
And it takes a huge amount of courage to step out and be a business owner, to go out on your own, and there's a level of satisfaction that's amazing. I remember the first time I've been in business for 15 years, and it's evolved. I started off as doing leadership development and facilitation. I moved that up to team building and corporate stuff, and then changed into business coaching from a client who actually said, you should be a coach, because I was naturally doing it and changed into that. But that first paycheck I ever got, that first person who paid me for work that I found and did myself, is hugely satisfying.
Right.
But it takes a lot of courage to go out on your own. And if you've been out on your own for 6 months, 1 year, 10 years, there's a lot of courage in doing that.
I agree. I totally agree. And I don't think we stop and pause and give ourselves credit for that sometimes.
No, and you also get a lot of people going, well, you'd be good at this job. I still have that sometimes. It's like, I have a job. That there's a lot of people who pressure us to go to the norm.
Exactly. I had, actually, my husband had said, I think you should look at doing this maybe part-time, and you could go do this. And I was like, I have a full-time thriving business that, I have a business that I'm CEO of and I'm running. Like, I can't take on another business. So you can, I'm not.
It's true. And I do think, I mean, you and I are in a similar space, which is in different ways. You're doing more of the life and personal coaching. I'm doing the business coaching. But I do
Mm-hmm.
find for anybody who's venturing into those services that are somewhat new, like coaching and some of the holistic services and other things like that, often people don't understand them. I come from an entrepreneurial family. My father was a serial entrepreneur, but they don't necessarily understand the type of work that we do, because it's not that. My father was a plumbing contractor. He owned a gas station. He owned a bunch of other things that are tangible and we understand.
Yeah.
But the service base of work on your life and work on your business is not as understandable for people.
Right. And it really is important, though. I think, you and I understand it. And I think the more people work on it, you need to have the support. You need to have people that have been there and are ahead of you, and you need people to lean on.
Yeah, absolutely. What would you say is the most important thing you've learned so far on your journey as an entrepreneur? As a CEO, I like that, as a CEO.
As a CEO, flexibility.
Mm-hmm.
Flexibility and actually, I would say two things: flexibility and not understanding and learning from the failures.
Okay, I love
because I think we use failure, the fear of failure, as this like panic attack, sort of like it's such a negative thing.
Mm-hmm.
And there's different levels of it, but with failure comes learning experience. And honestly, to all your listeners, if you're just starting out, and as Navigate started out, what Navigate was a great foundation, but what Navigate is now is so much stronger and more powerful and better for everybody, just because it's been refined. But has it always been a win-win? Absolutely not.
No, that's there was an athlete here speaking recently. She's in her 20s and she's a pole vault jumper, the one who goes over the jump. And she's like, you have to fail to win. And when you think about pole vaulting or high jumping, the winner is only identified when everybody fails. Right? The one who got the best last is the only one who wins. The winner actually only comes out when everybody fails. And so they're jumping to fail, it was a really interesting perspective that she was teaching young girls, is that her whole career is based on trying and trying until you fail.
That's interesting.
And it was a really interesting perspective on it. So in a business, we keep having to jump over the pole. And if we fail, great, but we have to keep trying and we have to keep raising the pole, which is basically what a high jumper does, is they keep raising it, getting better and better, and they're going to fail until they try again and try again. And it was a really wonderful perspective on how failure can help us. And
that's a great perspective on it. There was a quote somewhere about the winner is just the person who tried one more time and had won. Absolutely. From the person who didn't.
Absolutely. What surprised you the most in this entrepreneurial journey that you're on?
I think the people that I've met, like the wonderful support system that I've met. You go through a stage as an entrepreneur, especially initially, worrying about, am I good enough? And, am I an imposter? There's another person who says they're a life coach and, they work with women, and am I good enough to compete? And I think when you get out of your head game in that, because honestly, you are the best you. And so there really is no competition in the sense of there's only one of you and everyone has their individual story and doing what they do because of that story.
Right.
So you have to keep that in mind as you're going. And I think when you learn that and you learn to collaborate, then you really find some incredible resources and people. And what I loved was actually speaking in Canada last spring. The story was the same. The women I met there versus the women in the States that I worked with, the story was the same. We all deal with the same insecurities and the same fears and have the same desires. Mm-hmm. So I think that's been the greatest thing, is just opening this world of just incredible, smart, savvy women that, really, if we start collaborating, we really can change the world.
Yeah, and I agree. There's a huge amount of power in women and collaborating, and we're more common than we are different. I've been very privileged to work all over the world. And I have discovered in many of the stuff, I actually, when I first started my business, I did leadership development and training in Zambia in Africa.
Oh, fun.
And it was, I had a week's notice. It was like, would you come and do this in a week? I'm like, sure, I can do that. And they live a completely different life circumstance, you know, with AIDS. And I was there in 2005, 6 and 7. And AIDS was a big thing and dealing with it. But the commonalities and the things that both men and women deal with is the same, right? Their wants and basic needs are all the same. The fact that they live in a much different environment with a huge amount of trauma that we won't understand, we hope we'll never will have to understand in our lifetime. It was humbling to really see that we are the same, and we want the same things for ourselves and for the people that we love and for our community. And it was a fascinating experience. And I do agree. I love the concept of meeting people from all over the world and just seeing and the power that women can bring to that.
Yeah.
You know, I agree. I think it's CARE whose initiative is that women can change. If you change a girl's life, you change the world. Their marketing, their message, and their empowerment, and where they're trying to focus their energy is that empowering the girls in the world to become the women who can change the world. I agree.
Yeah, I love that.
How much does your gut play in your business success?
I think gut's 98 to 99%. Maybe it should be 100, to be honest. I think we need to trust our gut and our intuition, honestly, and realize that we're pretty soulful and our subconscious tells us a lot. So I am a true believer in, you know, if your gut is saying, you know, not such a good idea, go with it. And if it's saying it's a good idea, you know, there's nothing wrong with something being a little scary and fearful, but yet being exciting and going for it, versus saying, nope, hold back, like that's a bad alley to walk down. So
yeah. In hindsight, is there anything you would have done differently in setting this up and moving from that not being self-employed, not being an entrepreneur, to where you are now? Is there anything you would have done differently?
You know, I don't think so. I honestly don't think so. I think I really am a true believer that things happen for a reason. And I don't know. I mean, there's things I could say, oh, if maybe I didn't do this program or I shifted, maybe something would have happened. But honestly, I really believe, I'm a believer things happen for a reason. So I don't know if maybe 1 or 2 decisions would have changed where I'm at now. And I think I've learned so much along the way that I don't think I would have changed it.
It goes back to that, not necessarily failures. And I think failure is a strong word, but it does go back to the steps that we take and the path that we get makes us who we become.
Right.
So yeah, that's great. How do you recharge your batteries? Which I know is your passion and your topic. So I think that's a really good question for you, but how do you recharge your batteries?
I believe in self-care. I do take, I am a true morning person. I suggest everyone has a 5-minute morning routine, whatever that is for you. I think we had discussed, you know, 2 questions of the day is only for you and about you. You know, what are your intentions for the day and what do you need from the day? I happen to get up and I jump rope in the morning for, I don't even know if I hit a minute, but it gets my heart rate up. I get a cup of coffee then. So I do kind of my own like little exercise yoga routine, and I have a little mindfulness app that I listen to, like a slight meditation, because I don't have the patience for like a long meditation. But I do things like retreats. I love to cook. I just try and once a week, if I need to, listen to my body, listen to my gut, and if I need to kind of shut down for an hour, I shut down. If I need to take some time, I try and take some time. You know, right now I'm in a big travel season, but sometimes you just have to take a pause and just change your scenery and go for a walk, you know?
Yes. Power in walking and power in being in nature is huge. What advice would you give another woman who is ready for more for their business, but they're just kind of stuck? What advice would you give them?
I would say absolutely go for it. I would say, you know, make the plan that you want. You know, I'm a true believer in like design the roadmap that you want. So kind of lay out where you want to be, what your end goal is, and then design your 30, 60, 90 days sort of thing. What are the goals to get there? And realize, and whatever stage you're at, if you're still working and you have to work on this on the side, if you're jumping, if you can jump full into it, to do it, but really be very specific with your time. Try not to jump on emails and Facebook and all the social media first thing. Really, set your intentions of, if you're making your calls first thing in the morning, be very, very intentional with how you're going to structure your day to start your business.
Okay. The question I couldn't remember before has now come back to me, which is along that line. How much, one of the things that I find with my clients is really getting them to not allow technology to be their mind, not to allow these wonderful tools that we have called a smartphone to start ruling our life. And how do you feel from a self-care point of view and from your whole message of how should any woman, forget about women just in business, be dealing with these wonderful tools that have almost we've become a slave to them?
Mm-hmm.
And how do you, do you have any skills or recommendations around that?
Well, someone had said to me a while ago, and I truly do believe this, do not grab your phone first thing in the morning or last thing at night. Mm-hmm. Do not jump on all the social media platforms, and emails will kill you, and it's true. And I remember starting out, like, I thought I had to jump on my emails first thing. If you're expecting something to come through, look for it. Otherwise, that can happen. And especially starting a business, you're almost better off scheduling that time of sitting in when you're going to do it. Mm-hmm. So if you're going to schedule that in over lunch, then get on your phones, then look at it. All of us, I think, especially if we have children, we all have our phones nearby just in case somebody calls, right? We always jump for the spouse or the significant other or the children. But I would say really, like, try and keep that to your side and focus on what has to happen. As an entrepreneur, especially when you're starting out, you're CEO and you're running marketing and you're running sales and you're doing it all. To run a successful business, you have to generate some sales and you have to create your programs. So that's where you have to really get focused.
Yes. And you have to turn the cell phone off or turn the smartphone off and leave it. And that's one of the things that I have and try to get people to do is to schedule it, like you say. Schedule the times that you're going to be on social media. Schedule the times you're going to be on your smartphone, because they can really derail you. And they can take your focus right off what you need to be working on.
Absolutely. It can derail you. And I notice for me how it eats up time so fast. Yeah. Like you'll lose an hour or 2 hours of your day, like easily.
Easily, yes. Especially social media. And that's one of the shoulds that I really want to focus on for women is you don't need to be everywhere all the time. If you're not working on your business and you're being pulled left, right, and center, that's not going to grow your business. And it also, as much as women are multitaskers, I don't think we can multitask the amount that these smartphones have pulled us apart, right? Because it's not just one thing. You're looking at your email, you're looking at social media, you're bouncing to this, you're bouncing to that, and you're just full on not in the moment as well. Right.
And I think that's really important to think about, because you do have to be present in what you're doing. So you're better off chunking your day and saying, even if I'm doing my programs for 2 hours, I know I'm focused really deep and hard and working on that 2 hours, then take a half-hour break or 20-minute break, and then get into the next thing.
Along the lines of what you're talking about, of making yourself important and being self-care for yourself, I think you have to provide self-care for your business as well. One of the things I try to get people to realize is your business is your number one client. If you don't focus on your business and grow your business isn't going to be able to do whatever it is that you love to do, that you're empowered to do. You have to treat it that way and give your business self-care as much as you give yourself self-care.
Absolutely. Good point.
Yeah. So your expertise empowering women to recognize their power of self-care, self-doubt, self-confidence, self-worth, and take back control. How do you help women do that? Like, what are the keys to doing that? If they're 40 plus, which is that kind of era where we're half between, we're not millennials, we're not dealing with what millennials deal with. How do we do that? How do we take back self-control? Self-care, sorry.
Yeah, It's interesting, and it's an interesting process, especially if we haven't done it until now, until the 40 plus. My trigger was, and part of me writing my book was, my mother died at age 53, and I happened to be 21. And when I turned 53, and I turned my book that day on my 53rd birthday, my daughter turned 21.
Wow.
And it was kind of a real aha moment for me. Not that I knew it was coming, but I realized how young she was. She died of cancer, how young she was, how young I was, and how young 21 really was. And it kind of gave me this perspective, like, I need to know who Robin is. Like, I'm an adult and I have to find out what do I really want? There's things that I'd love to do, but I've never spoken up about it. And it comes down to you and me, right? No one's going to speak up for us, and no one's going to validate our wants and our desires. So you have to really start thinking about, what do you want? And it's part of creating a routine. It's part of saying, this is what I need. And especially at our age, for me, my kids are out of the house now. They've graduated college. They're all out of the house. I've raised them, and I'm very close with them, but they don't need that everyday sort of care. So why not can I not start doing for me and creating this business and all of that? So it's baby steps. And honestly, it really is. It's baby steps, but you have to create this routine for yourself, and you have to realize that, your values and your self-worth is 100% only validated by you.
And one thing comes to mind when you say all of that is that women are not done when their kids go out of the house. They're not done when they're in their 40s. We're not.
Oh my gosh.
But there's I think there's part of women that sometimes think that, right? That I've had my career, I've had my kids, and now I'm what, right? And to not think that we're done.
I think actually, just the opposite. I think you're just getting started.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like I'm just getting started.
Which is wonderful and empowering, and I agree. And I come from my father didn't retire until he was 84, and probably would not have never retired. He was on his third business, and it was
Wow.
more of he bought a maple syrup farm and started producing maple syrup when he was 64, I think 63, and
Wow.
did that until he was 84. And that's field and physical labor, and so I come from that, but most people don't. Most people come from that sense of, remember the old Freedom 55, and that sense of being free. And I think, what is freedom? And what is,
right.
It doesn't have to be not contributing. It doesn't have to be not working.
Well, I think freedom is really, what you want to create it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, where is your happy place, and what do you want? For me, knowing how I feel and realizing how many women have this fear around what their role is and where they should be. Mm-hmm. It's like, why can't you do what you want to do? So my goal is, I suggest to women that are younger, even if you're working a full-time job or you've got babies in the house, what is that one thing you love to do? Build it in. If it's once a week, if it's once a month, do something for you in that time. Because I didn't. I always worried about what would happen if I left the house.
Right.
But do it. And then you just, even if it's a business that's in your mind, start creating plant those seeds and create that. So when they're older, it's ready to take the next stage. Mm-hmm. And then for those that are my age, our age, go for it. You have an idea, go for it.
And now is the world of opportunity. There's so much more that we can do, and so many people that we can reach beyond our small, depending on your business, of course, but beyond the 1 or 2 miles from your home concept of what, a brick and mortar store has to deal with. For many people out there, including brick and mortar stores, you don't have to just sell into your community anymore. You don't have to just be constrained by that. There's so many opportunities out there.
And I think one of the greatest pleasures I've had is being able to reach out beyond just where I live and meet women around the world. Mm-hmm. I think it's just such a cool connection to have. But yeah, I think, design a roadmap and figure out what you want. And I always say, if anyone ever wants to talk, I always get on the phone for an hour with someone and say, where do you feel you're stuck? Let's talk. So
if a woman entrepreneur who is looking for more, if you wanted to give them one thing they could do today, they could start today to really take care of themselves and take care of their business, what would you recommend? What would you suggest?
I would say start your morning routine.
Okay.
Start your morning routine. Start with 5 minutes. Honestly, 5 minutes. And if you could do 3 mornings of 5 minutes, fantastic. And if you can next week do 5 minutes and 4 mornings, that in 1 month you're doing consistent 5 minutes a day, like just hold for 5 minutes. You don't have to increase that, but do a couple things, get your heart rate up, grab a cup of coffee, ask yourself what you want for the day. If you like to journal. If you like to hear a good podcast, do that. If you want to exercise, just do something for you and make sure you're get what you need from that day. Mm-hmm. But get yourself thinking about you and learning, because the more you're listening to you, you'll start listening to what your triggers are. And so realize, and be your own best friend. Start by that too.
Mm-hmm. What do you mean by that? Be your own best friend?
That this negative talk that we tend to do, we get so ready to talk about the negatives. We get so ready to criticize our faults. Mm-hmm. Meeting didn't go well, or, I wasted half a day, or I didn't get this done, or I didn't do, or I should have done sort of thing. We're so good at criticizing ourselves versus celebrate the wins. Mm-hmm. Celebrate that you got up and you did have your morning routine. Celebrate that you did make the 5 calls that you were going to make. Maybe you had 7 planned, but you made 5. Right. Celebrate that you're building something and you're further along today than you were yesterday.
I love that. That's a really great way to not push on what I didn't do versus what I did do or what I did achieve. So That's amazing. If any of our listeners want to get on and have that chat with you, how would they get a hold of you? How would they learn more about you?
Go to my website, which is www.robinmeyers.life. And there's a link for my calendar, and you can book a free hour call.
Excellent. And I'll put that in the show notes for you as well.
Okay. And there's also my top 5 morning strategy guide that you can download on there.
Okay. Excellent. And that's an important thing of creating a ritual. I use the word ritual, you're using strategy, but that sense of creating that ritual and doing something in the morning that's really unique and important for you to set your day. And what were the 2 questions that you had said that they should be asking themselves in the morning?
So ask yourself, what do you need from today? Mm-hmm. What do I need from today? And what are my intentions for the day?
Okay. Very powerful questions. And do you suggest they write them down or just ask them and have it? Or do you have I
used to always suggest that people write them down, but then I've had a few clients that are just against journaling for some reason. So I'm like, you know what? If you want to record it in your voice memos on your phone, do that. If you want to write them down, I think it's great. I love the visual personally. I like the visual because you can put it on your desk. You can put it up on your refrigerator. I think it's a great reminder of what you're saying to yourself. Mm-hmm. So I like writing it down.
I do. I think there's a power in the written mind to the hand to the paper.
Yeah.
I think there is something that goes on, but I do, as you encounter people who have forgotten how to write.
Yeah, I know. I think it's the whole phone thing.
It's the whole phone thing. So you have to, whatever works for you is the best way to do that.
Right, exactly.
Okay. I have a couple of questions as we wrap up. Okay. What is your superpower?
My superpower? Oh, I would say, I think my superpower probably is listening. I think my power is listening. I really, I don't know if is that a superpower?
Anything is a superpower. That's the whole point.
Yeah, I think I think so. Yeah. I think I'm a really good listener, and I'm a great connector of people, but I think I'm a really good listener.
And that's a wonderful superpower, because I think we're losing our ability to recognize that listening is as important as talking and having information come at us. So I think listening is a wonderful superpower. So that's great. Do you have a favorite quote, if it comes to mind?
I do have a favorite quote. It says, believe in yourself and you will be unstoppable.
Wonderful. And that's so on message for you. And I think women don't believe enough in ourselves. So that's a wonderful quote. What's the one most important message you'd like to leave our listeners with? Let them take away from our conversation.
I would say that you have the power to do anything you want at any age. You know, don't let what you think is impossible. Don't get stuck. Your impossible is totally possible, and you have total control over that. No one can take that away from you.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for doing this and for sharing your wisdom and your thoughts on self-care and entrepreneurship with my audience. I really appreciate it. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Ready for More podcast. You can find today's show notes and links at www.igniteyourmarket.com/readyformore. My name is Heather Cameron. I'm your podcast host. And when I'm not hosting this podcast, I'm busy working with entrepreneurial women like you who are ready for more in their business and are looking to get focused on their own unique path to success. You can find more about myself and my programs at www.igniteyourmarket.com. If you like what you heard, feel free to rate, review, and share with your friends. And don't miss an episode by subscribing. Until next time, remember, now is the best time to focus on your more and be inspired by your own unique gifts.